I'm here to talk about Alberta's 11 watershed planning and advisory councils, and we're also called WPACs, so I'll say that a lot. And we are collaborative, moderate, local voices for the watershed and for all the people who live in the watershed. We bring people together from all points of view to facilitate a consensus around solutions to our watershed challenges. WPACs do all kinds of work: research, policy analysis, advising governments, education, and planning. But really at the heart of what we do is connect people. Our members often comment to us that what they really like about the Oldman Watershed Council is their chance to hear other people's perspectives, build relationships with people they otherwise wouldn't have met, and just hear things that they don't hear anywhere else. And so really, we are the hubs where people feel safe to discuss difficult challenges. And by connecting people, we aim to respectfully debate issues and forge bridges that will allow compromise and hopefully consensus. Often our work revolves around making the watershed personally meaningful to individuals so that they will take the torch and do as much as they can in their own lives to maintain and improve our watersheds. Most often, people already have a strong connection to nature or animals or the land, and we just have to deepen their understanding of how their choices impact what they already appreciate. I'd like to illustrate the work of WPACs by telling you about the Oldman Watershed Council's work along the eastern slopes, namely our Headwaters Action Plan, and in particular, our education project that focuses on engaging off-highway vehicle users to change their behavior. Over the summer, we have had many conversations with off-highway vehicle users and random campers in their backcountry, and have learned a great deal about their motivations, values, and barriers to steering clear of water. They say it takes an entire village to raise a child, and there are about 250,000 people living in the Oldman Watershed, and about 10% are under 18. Many of those kids have never been to the mountains, and believe it or not, most have never been camping. We live in a world where antibacterial hand soap is ubiquitous, where wild animals are perceived as terrifying. Back when after-supper soccer games were a thing, my family had a tent. My papa and nana, who we called my grandparents on my dad's side, would take me and my 4 siblings, if they weren't too cool by then, to camping out to Far Lake, a public land area down a pretty rough dirt road up in northern Ontario, much like our forest reserve here. Being the youngest of 5 kids, I thought this was a great time until I too became too cool and too smart as a teenager. But fishing all day in my papa's ancient boat, swimming in the lake, and testing to see if my 12-pound Shih Tzu dog could swim was good fun. I found out pretty quick that she couldn't. I learned to fish by wrestling northern pike and hoping for pickerel instead. It took me a while to realize that not everyone grew up this way. In northern Ontario, this lifestyle is pretty common, but in many places, it's not. And what strikes me now, every time I see people camping in RVs, is often just how big and fancy the RVs are nowadays. I remember camping in a tent with my best friend Lindsay when there was raining so hard that the tent started leaking, and we had to run for shelter to her parents' camper, which was one of those on the back of the truck campers. And they were the most affordable and most common type where I was growing up. And I remember thinking that that was just the sweetest deal because they had a burner in there and we could have bacon sandwiches for breakfast even though it was raining. And 2015, campers are easily much longer and wider. And you can sleep on pillow-top mattresses, you can watch things on flat-screen TVs, and you can have a hot shower while camping. And my point is just that outdoor recreation has changed a lot over the years, even in my fairly short lifetime. And we seem to have a love-hate relationship with nature nowadays, where we fear it and also revere it. And few of us get the opportunity to come close enough to nature to really understand it. And we know that we protect what we love what we understand, and we understand what we are taught. So with modern camping and off-highway vehicles, nature is becoming more accessible to more people. It is possible to enjoy nature for longer using these new machines, but it's not all horrible people doing horrible things. I know lots of dedicated conservationists who ride the backcountry on quads, oftentimes because they're not physically able to make the trip anymore. So with these new technologies comes new freedoms, new responsibilities, and challenges. The population over Alberta is still expected to increase dramatically, probably a lot more so once the price of oil goes back up, but it's still coming. The land is becoming more and more stressed, and some people are going where they shouldn't be. Some willfully, but more often due to lack of education about our backcountry. It's up to us to provide access, to teach, and to promote a shared understanding of this shared landscape. But we're not an environmentalist group. We represent the OHV riders as much as the bird watchers and hikers. As a WPAC, we provide science and expert opinion on watershed management and health to the provincial government, and in fact, all levels of government. And we receive funding from many different sources, but we are independent and nonprofit. We provide a forum for all voices to be heard so that we can work together and make better, more conscious decisions about how we live and work and play in the watershed, and in particular, the Headwaters right now. One of our key pieces of work is our Integrated Watershed Management Plan, or IWMP, which all WPACs do. They're stakeholder-driven, collaborative, between First Nations, stakeholders, all sectors, and the public. Our IWMPs give voices to our visions for our watersheds and our key outcomes under the government's Water for Life strategy. There are 8 goals in the Oldman Watershed Council's plan, and today's talk revolves around just one: managing and protecting the integrity of our headwaters and source waters. We completed the action plan in 2013-14 and are now in the first phase of implementation. We chose Dutch Creek as our area for the pilot project because it has all the good, bad, and ugly in it. And our first step is to draw a baseline, as usual in scientific process. And we did this through a linear features classification project and a Headwaters Indicators Health project. The majority of these linear features we know continue to be used for purposes other than their original use. And what looks like an open public trail that people are happy to use probably isn't or shouldn't be. And that's ultimately the crux of our problem. This summer, we set out to understand the missing link, the part between people loving the backcountry and people destroying it while they're out there. We put the next piece of the scientific process into place, which was conducting our pilot project. We hired 2 outreach assistants all summer and fall, and they built relationships with the off-highway vehicle community and worked on developing an understanding of their concerns, barriers, and opportunities that are facing the off-highway vehicle riders and random campers. We spent numerous weekends in the backcountry, having conversations, sharing stories, and conducting surveys. Our interns also worked with the Crow's Nest Pass Quad Squad, the Government of Alberta, to deck some new bridges and help install other ones. We also hosted a restoration for recreation event in Dutch Creek, mostly in partnership with Cows and Fish, Spray Lake Sawmills, and the Quad Squad. Hundreds of volunteers have sacrificed weekends to get up early, work hard, and take action. And it's not just the oldie goldies, the usual volunteers, us preaching to the choir. We're seeing a lot of more interest, especially from young people who want less talk and more action. And they want to actually participate and do the work themselves. Sometimes it may seem as though our efforts are in vain in the face of the sheer volume and scale of our challenges, but lately we've been very encouraged by some of the progress we're seeing. On September 3rd, while our interns are still out busy building bridges, physically and metaphorically, the announcement came that the 2 new parks were created in the castle. 1,040 square kilometers of our headwaters have now been protected from commercial scale harvesting, and no new oil and gas licenses will be issued. We, as the Oldman Watershed Council, supported these parks as mixed-use areas and expect there will still be a wide range of recreational opportunities and forest management through other types of harvesting, controlled burns, and grazing. Just last week, the Minister of Environment and Parks, Shannon Phillips, also announced that we were the recipient of a large grant to help fund this work through the Watershed Restoration and Resiliency Program that will help us keep doing this for the next 2 summers, and also to establish the Dutch Creek demonstration site for community outreach. But money is not the only thing that is required, and it's not even the main part of the solution. But let me outline what we think is. I have 6 main points, and this is also most of the advice that we're providing to the government about management of our headwaters. So first of all, behavior change and education alone deliver limited results. What do I mean? Well, how can you tell riders to steer clear of water and use bridges if there are no bridges, the bridges are too small, or there is no information about which trails they should or shouldn't be using? What information is out there, they've been telling us, is very difficult to find and impossible to understand, especially from the back of a quad while you're trying to decide where to go. And we must not forget that the greatest effort being put into documenting trails and advising users on access or lack thereof has been provided by a lot of the users themselves and the volunteer organizations like the Quad Squad. Secondly, real change requires interventions at a systemic level. Recreation management planning, regulation, and enforcement are critical to support responsible use of our backcountry. And we were very encouraged by the government's linear footprint and recreation management processes that are in place, and we're really looking forward to implementation of those plans. Many leaders within the off-highway vehicle community have long championed the need for these interventions as well, and it's shared common ground. And the fact of the matter is, linear disturbances have largely been created first by industry. These roads and trails are then adopted by other users, even though they may not be ideal for that use. Third, a shared value for nature is a really strong common ground between the OWC and a very important and influential segment of the off-highway vehicle riding groups. They do value conserving nature, and often you're using their machines to access the backcountry to see wildlife and take photos and activities like that. Fourth, we must remember that the OHV community has footed the burden of trail maintenance, bridge building, and education for responsible use. Many of them are advocating for additional licensing and enforcement, and this is also common ground. The off-highway vehicle industry is valued at about $2 billion in Alberta. That's not a small amount. Fifth, although managing a shared landscape is complex, restricting access can be counterproductive if it means keeping people away from nature and losing that connection. The way forward involves an integrated approach to programming that includes promoting and supporting riders to steer clear of water, providing education on why staying off water matters, and ensuring we have those critical systemic interventions that I mentioned, like enforcement and regulation. So just to be clear, we're not saying that there isn't a problem. We know there's plenty of disrespectful and even unlawful behavior in the headwaters. But we also know this is a social problem as much as it is an environmental problem. So last but not least, we'd like to say that we need residents and recreationists to have their voices heard. We need people to get involved. It takes an entire village, after all, to protect our watersheds. And we need your efforts to make sure that our new demonstration site in Dutch Creek is a success. And many people in this room have been contributing to that, and I want to say thank you. So whether you enjoy the backcountry from a tent, a fancy fifth wheel, a camper, or a horseback, or even an OHV, we do have a lot of common ground, and there is a way forward if we can come up with some solutions, especially through the government processes that are in place, and I hope that we're all participating in that. And I hope our project illustrates that WPACs are collaborative, science-focused, and community-oriented. We know that we fill a unique and important role in connecting people and hope you will join us. Because no matter where you live in a watershed. And as there are 11 WPACs across Alberta, chances are high you could get involved somehow if you live in Alberta. So thank you for being part of the conversation today, and again to the many folks in this room who have helped us with these projects over the last few years. Thank you very much.